Welcome to the second session of this year's celebration of Season for Nonviolence for all of you men at Groveland and Attica Prison. Kit Miller, good to see you again. Since last week, still serving as director of the Gandhi Institute for Nonviolence, and still glad to be here with all of you. This week, I'm so happy to have Arun and Jonathan reflect on nonviolence. Uh, what does it mean to both of you to what is nonviolence? What does it mean to you? And then how do you see yourself as a practitioner of nonviolence? Arun, giving it to you first.
Yeah, folks, it's nice to be back again with all of you to talk a little about nonviolence. Um, the more I reflected on the nonviolence that my grandfather practiced and taught me over the years, is that it's more about personal transformation. It is about a learning experience, and that learning experience should uh, um, enrich your lives and make it better, and allow you to deal with issues in a more civilized way. And the way to do this, as my grandfather used to say to me, is to reflect every morning when you get up, and think about all the negative things that exist in your life, and how those negative things can be changed into positive. And then make a list of this and work on it every day, and try to change those negatives into positives. Some of them can be done very easily, and we can overcome them in a day or two through determination. But there are some that live with you for the rest of your life, and you can never really overcome them altogether. But you have the means to change that negative into positive whenever it occurs. One of them is anger. Anger is something that is very useful and very powerful. And we are going to deal with this in another workshop with you later on. But that is something that we need to learn about, how to understand our anger and how to use that anger positively and constructively. We have been taught, unfortunately, throughout our lives that this is evil and we need to suppress it or deny it, and that is not a very positive way of dealing with it. So these kinds of negative things that we have in our lives need to be changed and turned into positive. In that way, we grow, we become better human beings, we learn to have better relationships with people. Today, we see our relationships with people are at the worst possible level. There's so much hate and prejudice going on everywhere in the world, and we uh, we have become victims of it, or we become uh, practitioners of that kind of hate. And either way, it's not good, and that is because we have that negativity, and we are always suspicious of people, and we always look down on people who don't look like us, and it has multiplied over the years, and we have come to a situation now when it's out in the open, and um, we have expressed it in our country in very bad ways through violence and killing and destroying each other. And it's a shame that a country that is a powerful country, um, in many respects, has not been able to have better relationships between all the different citizens of the country. Uh, it just shows that we have put more emphasis on materialism and less on moral values. And we need to put more emphasis on moral values so that we can have a better relationship with people. And, these are things in nonviolence that teaches us to use the philosophy in our own lives to make a difference in our lives, and through our lives make a difference in the world. Unfortunately, everybody has looked at nonviolence as a means of conflict resolution, and so they use it only when a conflict arises, and try to find a peaceful solution to that conflict. But that is only a very small part of the philosophy of nonviolence as it was practiced by my grandfather. uh, it's important to learn about how to resolve conflicts peacefully, but more important to learn how to avoid conflicts altogether. If we don't learn how to avoid conflicts, how to create better relationships between people, and have a respectful, loving relationships, we will never be able to resolve conflicts. The conflicts will keep coming back, and eventually we get tired of those conflicts and want to put an end to it, and then we resort to violence, hoping that that would destroy the conflict. But that destroys human beings. It doesn't destroy the conflict. It doesn't destroy the problems that we face there. So we have to focus more on attacking the conflict rather than attacking the people. The other thing that I learned from the philosophy is about respect. A lot of people want respect, and respect is something you command. You can't demand respect. You can't catch somebody by the throat and force that person to respect you. That respect that comes out of that kind of violence is a respect that is generated by fear. The person will respect you only as long as he can fear you and fear your power. But uh, after that, when he overcomes the fear, that respect is gone. But the respect that comes from love and from understanding is a different kind of respect. And that respect, you have to earn it. You can't demand it. And the way you earn that respect is by showing similar respect to other people, uh, by respecting people, by respecting values, and living a good life. And that's how people come to respect you. Just as today we are celebrating Dr. King's birthday, and Dr. King had a lot of respect and still continues to be respected by people all over the world. And that is not because he demanded the respect, but because he commanded the respect through his life and through his love and understanding and respect for everybody else. So we have to learn from that, and learn to live respect so that others can respect us. These are few aspects of the philosophy of nonviolence, and I'm sure my colleague Jonathan will have more to add to this, and so I leave the floor to him now.
Yes, Arun, thank you. So in the Kenyan nonviolence, and by Kenyan, and that's spelled Kingian, uh, David Jensen and Bernard Lafayette gave it that name, Kenyan, from a book, one of Dr. King's second books, Strength for Love. He had a chapter where he wanted to like challenge American Christians, and he had wrote in that chapter in part, this may sound more Kenyan than Paulian. So David Jensen and Bernard Lafayette said, hey, we're going to call this curriculum and this approach Kenyan. And then Kenyan also means era, a Pacific era in time that we also call the civil rights era. Some people say that started in 1955 and ended around like 1968. But we're talking about all the campaigns, all the nonviolent movements that went on in there, the approaches that they used, King's philosophy. That's why they call it Kenyan. So when I took the course last year, the Kenyan Nonviolence Certification course, they wanted to make a distinction between nonviolence with a hyphen, non-violence, and non-violence is one word. Non-violence means without violence. So as long as I'm not doing any violence, then I'm practicing non-violence. Non-violence as one word is something totally different. So let me share for you an example. Some of you men may know him, Jules Presley. We used to come in together and sometime and talk about the season for nonviolence years ago. So Jules Presley was telling me about a story one day. He was walking to this corner store. He seen these two women fighting and a bunch of people watching them fight. So he got up, he went up in there and he broke the fight up. So at that moment, Jules Presley was practicing nonviolence as one word. Because when he got involved, he broke the fight up. But everybody else that was watching the fight was practicing non-violence. They wasn't being violent, but they was watching two other people fight. And they was just standing there watching. So one of the things that I learned from Arun Gandhi was that non-violence is an action word. Non-violence isn't about what you're not going to do. It's about what you're going to do. What are you going to do about the violence that's in your heart? What are you going to do about the violence that's in your family, the violence that's in your neighborhood, in your community, in society? I mean, what are you going to do about that? And that's what nonviolence is about. It's about what you're going to actually do. It's about action. And for me, practicing nonviolence is like, what am I going to do about the nonviolence in my heart? Because for many years, I practiced non-violence. I figured that if I'm not being violent, then I'm practicing nonviolence. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine with that. But then as I began to dig deeper and learn more about nonviolence, I was like, man, I've been doing this wrong for many, many years. I've been wasting time. I mean, because here it is, I'm just sitting around like watching people fight, seeing all the violence around me, thinking violent thoughts, sitting on a lot of violence in my heart. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm nonviolent. No, I just had it totally wrong then. So when I began to practice nonviolence as one word, I began to do something. Because you can't practice nonviolence as one word and you could just sit around all day and not do anything. You have to get involved. And that's what the season of nonviolence is about. That's why those journals that you have, that's what that pledge is all about. It's about what are you going to do? Not about what you're not going to do. What are you actually going to do? So to practice nonviolence is one word today. When I had a friend of mine, she was beefing with her coworker. They got into a huge argument. So she calls me on the phone and she tells me that she wants to beat up her coworker. And at first I didn't take the conversation that serious because I thought that she was just joking. I was like, nah, but she was serious. She really wanted to hurt her coworker. So then I began to talk to her like, why would you want to do that? I mean, what could the girl have possibly done to make you want to harm that girl like that? So as I began to talk to her, but not only talk to her, but just listen to why she wanted to respond to the situation like that. After a while, she began to calm down. And that right there was me practicing nonviolence as one word, because I didn't want to see her put herself in harm by harming somebody else, which in turn will harm her. So that's how you practice nonviolence. When you hear people talk about nonviolence, when you hear people talk about violence and talk about what they're going to do, you don't just let them go on and do that. If you can, intervene in that. Talk to them about that. When you yourself plan on doing a violent act towards somebody, just maybe take that situation to somebody else. Just listen to your own self. Are you practicing nonviolence by hurting somebody else? The simple answer is no, you're not. So to practice nonviolence is one word. Deal with the violence in your heart. That's where you can begin from. And you don't have to wait before, let's say, you get all the violence out your heart before you start trying to help others. Because by helping others, you could also remind yourself that, you know what, I'm practicing nonviolence and I'm growing confidence that I can continue to do this by helping others be nonviolent.